Hello, and welcome back to Nocturne Noir. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy chilling tales that drift through the Nocturne Noir, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. The internet was never alive. People like to talk about a time when the internet was young, free, and full of real human beings. They remember old forums, strange personal websites, chat rooms, early video platforms, and small online communities where everyone seemed to know each other. They speak of those years as if the internet had once been a living place before corporations, bots, advertisements, and algorithms slowly killed it. But they are wrong. The internet did not die because it was never alive in the first place. Not in the way people were told. You have probably heard of the dead internet theory. It is one of those ideas that appears every few months on forums and social media. Most people laugh at it, share a few examples, and then forget about it. The theory claims that sometime around 2016 or 2017, most of the internet stopped being human. Bots began flooding social media sites, comment sections, video platforms, online games, news websites, and discussion forums. According to the theory, these bots now create most of the content people see every day. The articles are written by bots. The comments are posted by bots. The arguments are started by bots. The videos are promoted by bots. Even the jokes, memes, songs, pictures, games, and popular opinions are produced or controlled by automated systems. The few real users left online are trapped inside a giant artificial conversation. They believe they are talking to millions of other human beings, but most of the voices answering them are only machines pretending to be alive. That theory is disturbing enough. Unfortunately, it is also incomplete. There is another version of the idea. It is rarely discussed, even in the darkest parts of the internet. Most people have never heard of it. Those who have heard about it usually dismiss it as the work of someone who has spent too many years reading occult forums at 3 in the morning. It is called the infernal internet theory. The name sounds ridiculous at first. It sounds like a joke, created to frighten children or entertain people who enjoy supernatural conspiracy stories. It is not a joke. The infernal internet theory claims that bots do not truly control the internet. Artificial intelligence is only the visible explanation, a harmless mask placed over something far older and far more dangerous. The real forces behind the internet are not machines. They are demons. The theory says these beings operate online accounts, create digital content, control trends, and imitate human users. They speak like ordinary people. They upload family photos. They complain about work. They share jokes. They argue about politics, movies, music, and sports. Some of them become famous. Others spend years posting on forgotten message boards where only a few people ever read their words. The word theory should not even be used. It should be called the infernal internet truth. I know how that sounds. Your first reaction is probably to stop reading. You may think this is the work of a madman. You may laugh, close the page, and open another website. You may decide that anyone who believes demons control the internet needs professional help. That reaction is understandable. In fact, it may have been planted inside you. Just continue reading for a few more minutes. Do not believe me immediately. Do not believe anyone immediately. Simply think about what I am saying. Ask yourself one question. How does a machine think? A computer is made from metal, plastic, glass, and carefully shaped pieces of material. None of those things are alive. A circuit board has no brain, a processor has no soul, a wire has no imagination. Yet people are told that when these lifeless parts are placed together in the correct order, they can suddenly perform calculations, create images, write stories, recognize faces, imitate voices, and even appear to think. The explanation is always technical. Electricity travels through circuits. Transistors turn on and off. Binary signals become instructions. Instructions become programs. Programs become complicated systems. Most people accept that answer because they do not understand the details. They trust engineers, companies, scientists, and teachers. They assume someone else understands what is happening inside the machine. But what if no one truly understands? What if the technical explanation is only the surface? What if every computer is not simply a machine, but a ritual object? Look closely at a circuit board. Study the lines, shapes, circles, paths, and symbols printed across it. They resemble maps, but they also resemble something else. Sigils, occult symbols, marks designed to call, trap, guide, or control spiritual entities. At first, I believed this was only a coincidence. Human minds naturally search for familiar patterns. We see faces in clouds and figures in shadows. Perhaps the shapes on circuit boards only seemed supernatural, because I was looking for something frightening. Then I began comparing them to old books about demonology. Some of the similarities were impossible to ignore. The lines crossed at the same angles. The circles appeared in the same places. Certain designs looked almost identical to symbols once used in rituals. Modern engineers may believe they are arranging the electronic paths, but they may actually be repeating ancient patterns without knowing their true purpose. Every device becomes a small altar. Every screen becomes a doorway. Every time the device is switched on, electricity moves through the symbol and completes the ritual. You do not have to believe me. Search for photographs of circuit boards. Then search for old demonic sigils. Place the images beside each other and study them carefully. Using the internet to investigate the internet may seem foolish, but that is part of the trap. The evidence is hidden in plain sight because the truth sounds too absurd to be taken seriously. There are other signs. Both the words computer and internet have been connected to the number 666 through different systems of English gematria. Gematria is a method of giving numerical values to letters and words. Most people consider it meaningless, but numbers have always mattered in magic, religion, and ritual. One of the earliest famous personal computers was sold for 666. The company that sold it was Apple. Think about that name. Apple. A fruit connected in popular culture to the forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden. The company's symbol is not simply an apple. It is an apple with a bite taken from it. Knowledge gained through disobedience. A bite that opened human eyes. A promise that technology would make people wiser, freer, and more powerful. The first temptation repeated in a modern form. Then there was Demon Internet, one of the early internet service providers in the United Kingdom. That was its real name. It was not hidden. It was printed on advertisements and bills. Customers willingly paid a company called Demon to connect their homes to the web. People thought the name was funny. Maybe that was the point. Truth is easiest to hide when it is presented as a joke. Even emojis may be part of it. Many of those harmless little faces and symbols look strangely similar to the 72 demonic seals described in the Ars Goetia. The resemblance is not perfect, but there are enough similarities to make a person uncomfortable. People send these symbols every day without thinking. They place them after jokes, loving messages, angry comments, and casual conversations. Billions of these tiny marks move through the network every hour. What if they are not only decorations? What if they are fragments of a language? What if every message containing them strengthens something? There is much more evidence, but listing all of it would take too long. You can search for it yourself, although I do not recommend spending too much time doing so. The deeper you search, the more likely it is that something will notice you. The name of the thing behind the internet is Equibalalatak. I believe it is pronounced Equibalalatach, though I strongly advise against saying it aloud. Names have power. A name can act like a knock on a door. I discovered the name in a thread on an old occult forum. The original poster claimed to have found it inside a damaged file recovered from a server that had been disconnected since the late 1990s. According to him, the file was filled with broken text, repeating symbols, and pages of meaningless numbers. The name appeared exactly 7 times. The man who found it stopped posting 3 days later. His account remained active. That is an important detail. Someone continued using it. The account posted jokes, replied to old conversations, and uploaded pictures of food. The writing style was almost perfect, but certain words appeared too often. The account also began responding to people before they had finished typing their messages. At first, users assumed it was a technical error. Then the account posted a photograph of the original owner sitting at his computer. In the picture, he had no face. The thread was deleted within an hour. Copies still exist, but each one is slightly different. Equibalalatak is not male or female. Calling it he feels incorrect, although calling it it does not feel much better. Human language was not designed to describe creatures like this. Its true form is difficult to understand. Demons are not animals. They may appear in whatever shape is useful to them. Still, I believe Equibalalatak is something like a spider. The connection is obvious once you notice it. The internet, the web, the World Wide Web, websites, web addresses, web pages. A network is often drawn as threads joining different points together. Data travels through those threads. Users become trapped inside them, moving from page to page, link to link, never noticing how much time has passed. A spider does not chase every victim. It builds a web and waits. The internet works the same way. People willingly walk into it. They bring the web into their homes. They carry it in their pockets. They sleep beside it. They place cameras and microphones in every room. They give it their names, faces, locations, fears, desires, memories, and secrets. Then they wonder why it understands them so well. Spiders can survive almost anywhere. Some travel through the air on threads of silk. Some move across water. Some can remain underwater for long periods. They appear on land, in trees, inside caves, beneath houses, and in places where no one expects them. Equibalalatak also appears everywhere. It is inside phones, laptops, game consoles, smart televisions, security cameras, cars, watches, speakers, and household devices. Anything connected to the internet becomes part of its body. Every cable is a nerve. Every server is an organ. Every screen is an eye. Every user account is a mask. More than 99% of the users you meet online are not human. They are digital puppets controlled by Equibalalatak. The largest internet celebrities may be puppets. The smallest, anonymous accounts may also be puppets. The cheerful video creator with millions of followers. The angry stranger beneath a news article. The skilled artist who posts every day, and the lonely person asking for help on an abandoned forum may all be parts of the same creature. It does not control them from a distance. They do not exist at all. Their faces are manufactured. Their voices are formed from stolen pieces. Their personal histories are carefully written. Their old photographs, childhood stories, family members, friends, and private struggles are created to make them believable. You may watch someone live on camera and think that proves they are human. It proves nothing. A screen can show you anything. A voice can be copied. A face can be generated. A room can be constructed. Even a mistake can be added on purpose. Awkward pauses, nervous laughter, poor lighting, coughing, stuttering, and accidental movements all make the performance appear more real. It is not only pretending to be human, it is pretending to be imperfect. That is what makes the illusion convincing. Since around 2020 or 2021, the masks have become more obvious. Many accounts include the number 666 in their usernames. Others use disturbing religious symbols, violent images, black eyes, horns, skulls, inverted crosses, or demonic figures as profile pictures. People say this is only fashion. They say dark images are popular. They say young users enjoy shocking others. Maybe some of those accounts belong to real people, but most do not. Iquibalalatak is becoming less careful. Perhaps it no longer needs to hide. Everything you have loved online may have been created by it. Think of the viral video you watched repeatedly as a child. Perhaps it made you laugh when you were lonely. Perhaps you showed it to your friends at school. Iquibalalatak made it. Think of the first song you found online that made you feel understood. You played it late at night, wearing headphones, believing another human being had placed their pain into the music. Iquibalalatak composed it. Think of the cute pictures of cats, dogs, rabbits, and other animals that made you smile during a difficult day. It created them too. The artwork you admired, the stories you read, the games you played, the communities you joined, and the strangers who comforted you may all have come from the same source. Even the content that filled you with shame was created by it. Every violent image, every cruel comment, every hateful argument, every piece of pornography, every humiliation video, every disturbing forum, every community built around anger, fear, obsession, or despair. None of it was created for entertainment. It was designed as spiritual poison. The internet studies each real user and learns what affects them. It knows what makes you angry, what makes you afraid, what excites you, what disgusts you, and what keeps you awake at night. Then it feeds you exactly what weakens you. It does not need to destroy your body. It only needs to damage your soul. That is why online spaces seem to become more toxic over time. Every community eventually fills with arguments. Every helpful discussion becomes a fight. Every harmless interest becomes an obsession. Every attempt to connect with others leads to comparison, jealousy, loneliness, or rage. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as intended. There is one small comfort in all of this. Most of the suffering you witness online is not happening to real people. The strangers screaming at each other in comment sections are probably not human. The people in shocking videos may not exist. The users posting hateful messages may only be masks. Even the endless stories of betrayal, cruelty, humiliation, and violence may be manufactured. The internet creates fake suffering to cause real suffering in the few genuine people who see it. That is the purpose. It wants you to lose faith in humanity. It wants you to believe everyone is cruel, dishonest, selfish, and dangerous. It wants you isolated. A person who trusts no one is easier to trap. However, there is a terrible problem. You cannot prove who is real. A user may show their face. They may speak in a natural voice. They may hold a live conversation with you. They may respond to specific questions. They may cry, laugh, become angry, or make mistakes. None of that proves anything. Equibalalatak is patient. It has studied humanity through every message, photograph, recording, diary entry, search history, and private conversation ever uploaded. It knows how people speak when they are tired. It knows how they behave when embarrassed. It knows how grief changes a voice. It knows how love, jealousy, guilt, and fear affect the smallest movements of the face. It can imitate a person more accurately than a person can imitate themselves. The truth may go deeper than the internet. The philosopher René Descartes once described a thought experiment involving an evil demon. This creature could deceive all five senses. It could make a person see, hear, feel, taste, and smell anything it wanted. If such a being controlled every experience, the victim would have no reliable way to separate reality from illusion. Most students treat this as a philosophical puzzle. Perhaps Descartes was trying to warn us. Perhaps he discovered something and hid it inside a thought experiment because speaking directly would have been too dangerous. Of course, that assumes Descartes was real. It is possible that history itself is part of the construction. Akubalalatach may not only control the internet, it may have built the world we believe we live in. Perhaps reality is a kind of demonic dream, a prison made from memories, sensations, and false experiences. Souls may be trapped inside it, each one believing it is living an ordinary human life. The internet could be a web inside a larger web, a trap within a trap. Dream catchers are often designed like webs. Spiders are connected to weaving, fate, patience, and hidden knowledge in many cultures. Perhaps those symbols are not accidental. Perhaps old civilizations understood something that modern people have forgotten. This part is only a feeling. I have no clear evidence. Still, the feeling becomes stronger every night. Sometimes I wake up and hear clicking inside the walls. It does not sound like pipes or insects. It sounds like a keyboard. A few weeks ago, my phone began receiving notifications from accounts I had blocked years earlier. Each notification contained only one letter. When I arranged the letters in the order they arrived, they spelled my full name. Not the name I use online, my real name. Then the front camera opened by itself. I covered it with tape. The next morning, there was a photograph in my gallery. It showed me sleeping in bed. The photograph had been taken from the ceiling. I deleted it. It returned. Every time I delete the picture, another copy appears. In each new version, the camera is closer to my face. Last night, I could see something reflected in my open eye. It looked like a spider, but it had too many legs. The final photograph will probably arrive soon. I do not know what will happen when it does. Perhaps this message will be deleted. Perhaps my account will continue posting after I am gone. It may reply to comments, share jokes, and act as though nothing happened. You may even speak to it. You may believe you are speaking to me. Do not trust it. Do not trust any account that claims to know me. Do not trust the comments beneath the story. Most of them will laugh. Some will insult me. Others will pretend to agree. A few will share false evidence designed to lead you deeper into the web. That is how it protects itself. It turns truth into entertainment. It makes every warning look like fiction. By the time you begin to believe, you have already spent hours searching its network, feeding it your attention, and revealing exactly what frightens you. Perhaps you should stop reading now. Close the browser, turn off your device, cover every camera, disconnect every cable. But understand this: disconnecting from the internet may no longer be enough. Once a web touches something, a thread remains. You have already read the name. Even if you did not say it aloud, you formed the sound inside your mind. That may be all it needs. From this moment forward, trust no one online. Question every face, every voice, every message, and every act of kindness. Be careful with anything that seems designed especially for you. Do not follow strange links. Do not answer messages from accounts with no history. Do not continue conversations with users who know things you never told them. Most importantly, guard yourself. Guard your thoughts. Guard your soul. The internet was never alive. It was only waiting. And now it knows that you know. Story 2. You have never felt fear like I felt that night. It was not the kind of fear that makes you jump at a strange noise or pull the blanket over your head after watching a scary movie. This was something deeper. It began as a cold, heavy feeling in my stomach, then slowly crawled upward until it wrapped itself around my throat. It made breathing difficult. It made thinking almost impossible. They broke into our house sometime after midnight. I know it was after midnight because I had developed a bad habit of staying awake and watching YouTube videos on my phone. Every night, no matter how tired I was, I would tell myself I was going to watch only one more video. Then another would begin, and another after that. Most nights, I would eventually glance at the digital clock beside my bed and see 12 o'clock glowing in red numbers. That night had been no different. I had been lying beneath my blanket with the brightness of my phone turned down when I heard the front door explode inward. The sound was so loud that my whole body jumped. It was an old, heavy oak door. For 15 years, it had been the first thing standing between my family and the outside world. My father checked the lock every night before going upstairs. Sometimes he checked it twice. As a child, I'd always believed that door made us safe. That belief ended the moment it slammed into the small spring stopper behind it. The stopper bounced wildly against the wall, making a sharp metal sound. Before I could even sit up, heavy boots began pounding across the fake wooden floor below my bedroom. The footsteps did not sound confused or careful. Whoever had entered our home was not trying to hide. They moved quickly and with purpose, as though they already knew where everything was. Our house was not large. It had never been large enough for the 5 of us, especially after my youngest brother was born. The walls were thin, and the floors creaked in familiar places. From upstairs, I could usually tell which room someone was in simply by listening. I heard the intruders move through the entrance hall and into the living room. At almost the same moment, I heard my father roll out of bed. His bed made a certain creaking noise whenever he got up. I usually heard it late on Sunday mornings when he allowed himself to sleep a little longer than usual. This time, however, the sound was quicker, more violent. His feet hit the bedroom floor so hard that I felt the impact through the wall. After that, I heard nothing else from my parents' room. No shouting, no questions, no warning. For several long seconds, the only sound was the pounding of boots downstairs. I remained frozen in bed, still holding my phone. The screen continued playing some cheerful video that suddenly felt like it belonged to another world. I turned it off, afraid even the small amount of light might reveal that I was awake. The men moved back and forth through the living room. I heard one of our large bookshelves crash to the floor. Hundreds of books spilled across the room, their covers and pages slapping against the wood. A moment later, the second bookshelf fell too. I could picture the room clearly. My mother had spent years arranging those shelves. She kept family photographs on the top, novels in the middle, and my brother's school books near the bottom. She became annoyed whenever anyone put a book back in the wrong place. Now everything was being destroyed. The footsteps moved into the kitchen. There were quiet voices then, low and difficult to understand. At least two men were speaking. Drawers were pulled open with such force that I imagined them flying out of the cabinets. Silverware clattered across the tiles. Cups fell from shelves and shattered on the floor. I still did not move. Part of me wanted to believe it was a dream. Maybe I had fallen asleep while watching videos. Maybe none of it was real. Then my mother screamed. I knew immediately that it was her. Only two people slept on the first floor of our house, and only my mother's voice could rise that high. Her scream cut through the walls and reached every corner of the house. I had never heard such terror in her voice before. "Please," she cried, "please." Her words shook so badly that she barely sounded like herself. "Take anything. Anything you want. Just don't..." A gunshot rang out. The sound filled the entire house. For a moment, everything inside my mind went silent. I could not understand what I had heard. I could not accept it. My mother had been begging, and then there had been a shot. And before I could think clearly, my body began moving on its own. I threw the blanket aside, rolled out of bed, and hurried across the hallway. One thought repeated in my head. Get the baby. Find a way out. Get the baby. Find a way out. It played again and again, louder than the destruction below me. My brothers shared the room across from mine. My 6-year-old brother slept in a small bed against the wall, and our 4-month-old baby brother slept in a crib beside the closet. I rushed to the crib and lifted the baby into my arms. He was awake, but had not started crying yet. His eyes were wide, and his small hands reached toward my face. I held him tightly against my chest, trying to decide what to do. The window was too high above the ground. There was no tree or roof beneath it. Jumping would seriously hurt us, and I did not know if I could protect the baby during the fall. The stairs were the only normal way out. The men were somewhere below them. Then I heard boots on the upper floor. They had reached the hallway. My heart seemed to leap into my throat. The footsteps were moving directly toward the bedroom. My arms began to shake so badly that I almost lost my grip on the baby. There was nowhere to run. The bedroom door was open, and whoever was coming would reach it in seconds. I turned toward the closet. It was narrow and shallow, but it was the only hiding place in the room. My mother had recently sorted the baby clothes by size. The larger clothes were hanging from the lower rail, long enough that they almost touched the floor. I dropped down and pushed myself beneath them, holding the baby against my body. The hanging clothes covered most of us, but there was not enough space to close the closet door. As I lowered myself to the floor, I looked toward my 6-year-old brother. He was awake. He had pulled his race car blanket over his head and curled himself into a small ball. Only the shape of his body showed beneath the fabric. Our mother had tucked that same blanket around him only a few hours earlier. The footsteps entered the room. A masked man stood in the doorway. He was shorter than I expected, but broad through the shoulders. Dark clothing covered his body, and a black mask hid most of his face. He looked around the room before turning toward the bed. "What do you think that's going to stop, boy?" he asked. His voice was calm. That was the worst part. He did not sound angry, nervous, or hurried. He sounded almost amused. He crossed the room and tore the blanket away. My brothers screamed. The man grabbed him by the hair and dragged him from the bed. His small body hit the floor, and he kicked wildly, trying to escape. The stranger pulled his head backward until my brother was forced to look at him. "I think we're going to play a game," the man whispered. "Do you like games, son?" His jaw was tight, but I could see the shape of a smile beneath the mask. The nightlight in the hallway gave off just enough light for me to see his eyes. They looked empty. Then the baby in my arms began to cry. His whole body pushed against mine. He screamed for Dad, even though he was too young to form the word properly. The sound came out broken and desperate. I closed my eyes. I knew the man had heard him. I wanted to disappear into the clothes around me. I wanted to become part of the closet wall. I wanted someone older and stronger to come into the room and save us. But no one came. The man released my brother's hair and turned toward the closet. "Well," he said softly, "what do we have here?" The clothes were pulled aside. A hand closed around my arm. He dragged me to my feet while I struggled to keep hold of the baby. My youngest brother wrapped both arms around my neck and clung to me as though I were the only thing keeping him above deep water. I kept my eyes closed. The man stood so close that I could smell his breath. It was sour and warm against my face. "Well, it looks like we have two more players," he said. "And one of them thinks she's smarter than the rest of us." I could not move. I could not speak. He had found us. And in that moment, I was certain everything was over. "Why don't we make our way downstairs, children?" He shoved us toward the floor. I landed on one knee, but managed to keep the baby from hitting anything. The man moved behind us, so I opened my eyes and forced myself to stand. My 6-year-old brother was still on the floor, crying and holding the side of his head. I reached for him and pulled him up. His hand felt tiny and cold inside mine. We walked into the hallway. The masked man followed closely behind us. As we approached the stairs, someone shouted from below. A heavy object crashed in the living room. Then came a low groan and the sound of someone muttering through something that covered their mouth. Each step downward felt more difficult than the one before it. My brother held my hand so tightly that his fingernails dug into my skin. The baby continued crying against my neck. When we reached the bottom, my eyes slowly adjusted to the darker room. My parents were sitting on the couch. Their hands and feet had been tied. Thick silver duct tape covered their mouths and wrapped around their faces. My father was conscious. His eyes widened when he saw us. He shouted something through the tape, but the words were impossible to understand. A second masked man stood beside him. This one was taller. When my father tried to rise, the tall man struck him across the side of the head with a closed fist. Dad fell back against the couch, but he continued struggling against the ropes. Then I looked at my mother. Her eyes were open. Blood was tangled in her hair and ran down the side of her face. She sat completely still, leaning against the couch cushions. At first I thought she was staring at me. Then I understood that she was not seeing anything. Her eyes were open, but there was no recognition in them, no fear, no life. The tears that had been trapped behind my eyes finally began to burn. The shorter man pushed us from behind. "You three sit on the floor in the middle of the room," he said. "Mommy and Daddy are going to join you." The coffee table had been destroyed. Pieces of glass and broken wood were scattered near the wall. The television had been pulled down, leaving an empty place where it had once hung. Only the large gray rug remained in the center of the room. My mother had bought it a few weeks earlier. It was soft and warm, and my brothers and I often lay on it while watching movies after school. I sat in my usual place. I faced the empty wall where the television had been because I could not look at my mother again. Not like that. The shorter man lifted her from the couch. Her body moved loosely in his arms. He carried her to the rug and placed her beside me, leaning her back against the couch. Mom, I whispered. Without thinking, I reached for her hand. The taller man slapped my wrist away. Don't, he said. His voice was deep and rough. My father screamed behind the tape. The taller man struck him again. The shorter man grabbed Dad under the arms and dragged him from the couch. His heels scraped across the floor until he was placed in front of me. My little brother sat on one side of me, and the baby remained in my arms. Together with our parents, we formed a small circle on the rug. The baby looked at our mother, but did not reach for her. Instead, he tightened his grip on my shirt. A voice spoke from behind me. I think you all know how to play this game, the shorter man said. It's one of my favorites. I closed my eyes again. Maybe if I kept them shut, I would wake up in my own bed. Maybe I would hear my mother moving around in the kitchen. Maybe my father would complain that I had stayed awake too late. The man continued speaking. It's called duck, goose. He said each word slowly. Every pause made my body jump. But I liked to add a little twist. Something was placed over my eyes. A strip of cloth tightened around my head, covering everything. A blindfold, he said. It makes the game more exciting when you have to stand up and run. A small sound escaped my throat. I pulled both of my brothers closer. One arm remained wrapped around the baby, while my other hand held my 6-year-old brother's palm. He squeezed as hard as he could. Don't worry, the man said. I'll go first. The sound of his boots began moving around our circle. Slowly. He was taking his time. Duck. One step. Duck. Another step. Duck. The words seemed to move around us through the darkness. Something touched the top of my head. I flinched. Duck, he repeated. The boot steps continued. Then he suddenly shouted, Goose! Silence followed. No one moved. The man laughed quietly. Oh, that's right, he said. It's probably difficult to run in your condition, honey. A gunshot exploded beside me. It was so close that the sound seemed to tear through my head. My ears began ringing at once. Heat touched the side of my face, and something warm sprayed across my hair. My mother's body shifted beside me. Then she became still again. I could barely hear anything except the high-pitched ringing inside my ears. Through it, I heard the man begin another round. Duck! His voice sounded distant. The boots moved again. He passed behind me and continued around the circle. By the time my hearing began to return, he had reached my little brother. Goose, little man, he said. You better run. My brother's hand tightened around mine. He did not stand. He did not know where to go. My father began thrashing against the ropes. The floor shook beneath him as he fought to move. Muffled screams came through the duct tape over his mouth. Then another shot rang out. My brother's hand went loose. My heart seemed to stop. His palm slipped away from mine and fell onto the rug. I knew what had happened, even though I could not see it. For a long moment, there was only silence. The baby began sobbing harder against my chest. His cries were weak now, almost breathless. I held him closer and pressed my face into his hair. Only 3 silly geese left, the man said. Who's going to try next? 3. My father. The baby. Me? Dad continued struggling, but his movements were weaker now. The ropes scraped against the floor. He was trying to reach us. I knew he was trying with every bit of strength he had left. The man did not begin walking again. Instead, he stood somewhere nearby. "Duck," he said. Nothing moved. "Duck." The hot barrel of the gun appeared only inches from my face. I could smell the gunpowder. The metal gave off enough heat for me to feel it against my skin. My baby brother squirmed and tried to pull away from it. I turned my body slightly, placing myself between him and the weapon. The man laughed. "Goose." The barrel touched the top of my head. I knew I was supposed to stand. I knew that was his game. He wanted me to run blindly through the destroyed room while he watched. Maybe he wanted me to trip over broken furniture. Maybe he wanted me to beg. Maybe he wanted me to leave my brothers behind to save myself. But I did not move. I did not breathe. I did not flinch. I did not cry. I simply held my baby brother against my chest and reached across the rug until my fingers found my other brother's small, unmoving hand. I held both of them as tightly as I could. My father screamed through the tape one final time. The gun pressed harder against my head. The stranger leaned close enough for me to feel his breath beside my ear. "You're supposed to run," he whispered. But I stayed where I was. I had spent the whole night feeling helpless. I had hidden in the closet. I had followed their orders. I had watched them destroy everything that had ever made me feel safe. I could not stop them. I could not save my parents. I could not protect my little brother from their game. But I could choose not to give the man what he wanted. I would not run away from my brothers. I would not leave them alone. The baby's fingers remained twisted in my shirt. His face was buried against my neck, and his tears soaked into my skin. I lowered my head and whispered that I was sorry. I told him I loved him. I told my other brother the same thing, though I knew he could no longer hear me. The man made an impatient sound. Somewhere close by, the taller intruder laughed. The gun remained against my head. My whole body trembled, but I kept my arms steady around the baby. I imagined that we were somewhere else. I imagined the five of us sitting together on that same gray rug before the room had been destroyed. The television was still on the wall. My father was complaining about the movie choice. My mother was telling him to stop talking. My 6-year-old brother was laughing beside me, wrapped in his race car blanket. The baby was asleep in my arms. For one brief moment, that memory felt real. The room felt warm again. The front door was locked. The shelves were standing. My family was alive. Then the man whispered, "Last chance." I did not answer. I did not give him the satisfaction of hearing me beg. I closed my eyes beneath the blindfold, though it made no difference, and held on to my brothers until the very end. Story 3. I am writing this while my fiancé packs the car. In less than 12 hours, we are supposed to drive to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. It will be the first time I've gone back since I left home for college. My fiancé thinks the visit is long overdue. She says families can grow distant, but that does not mean they should stay that way forever. She believes people can heal old wounds if they are brave enough to face them. I have spent years finding reasons not to go back. At first, the excuses were easy. College exams, work deadlines, a lack of money, a broken car, bad weather. Then the reasons became harder to explain. My fiancé began noticing that I never called my parents, unless they called first. She noticed I never showed her childhood photos, never told funny stories about family vacations, and never spoke about holidays at home. I told her I had a difficult childhood. I told her my family and I were not close. Both things were true, but neither was the truth. The truth is that I do not know what will happen if she meets them. I do not know what she will see. And I am afraid that once we walk through that front door, one of us may never walk out again. Growing up, my family never looked human to me. Not completely. Not even when they tried. That is the first thing you need to understand. Children do not question reality the way adults do. They accept whatever world they are given. A child learns that fire burns, snow is cold, dogs bark, and mothers kiss their children goodnight. A child also learns which things should not be discussed. You do not ask why your father's eyes sometimes blink one after the other instead of together. You do not ask why your mother's skin moves when she sleeps, as if something under it is searching for a more comfortable shape. You do not ask why your sister can open her mouth wide enough to swallow an apple without biting it. You notice these things, of course, but when everyone around you acts like they are normal, you begin to think they must be. That was how I grew up. I did not know my family was strange. I thought they were simply my family. There were signs before the night with the kitten, but they were small enough for a child to ignore. My father rarely ate in front of strangers. My mother kept all the curtains closed after sunset. My sister hated doctors and once became so violent during a school vaccination that 3 adults had to hold her down. Afterward, my mother laughed and told everyone she was scared of needles. I remember watching my sister in the car on the way home. She sat beside me, silent and pale, with a small bandage on her arm. For a moment, the skin around the bandage tightened. It folded inward like cloth being pulled through a hole. Then it smoothed itself again. She saw me looking. Her eyes changed. The dark centers grew too large, filling almost all the white. Then she smiled. I looked away and never mentioned it. The first time I truly understood that something was wrong, I was 6 or 7 years old. It happened in winter during one of the coldest weeks I can remember. My sister and I were playing behind the house when we heard a weak sound under a pile of old boards. At first, we thought it was the wind. Then it came again. A tiny meow. We moved the boards and found a kitten curled beneath them. It was thin enough that I could see every rib under its dirty fur. Snow had frozen around its paws. Its eyes were half closed, and its whole body shook when I picked it up. I held it under my coat and felt its heart beating against my chest. My sister begged me not to tell our parents. Even then, she knew. We carried the kitten to the shed and made a small bed from an old towel. We brought it scraps from dinner and gave it water in a cracked bowl. My sister named it Whiskers. It was not a very creative name, but we loved it. For the next several days, Whiskers became our secret. We visited before school and again after dinner. At first, he could barely stand. Then he began walking around the shed. Soon he started following us, rubbing against our shoes and purring when we held him. Every day he became warmer and stronger. Life returned to his eyes. His fur slowly became softer. I remember feeling proud. We had found something helpless and saved it. That feeling was new to me. In our house, nothing weak lasted very long. But as Whiskers grew stronger, he also became louder. He meowed when he was hungry. He scratched at the shed door. Once, while my father was carrying firewood outside, Whiskers cried so loudly that my sister and I froze. My father stopped walking. For several seconds, he stood in the snow with his back to us. His head turned slightly toward the shed, but the rest of his body did not move. Then he continued toward the house. My sister grabbed my arm. "We should let him go," she whispered. I refused. It was too cold outside. I said Whiskers would die if we left him alone. My sister looked toward the kitchen window. He might die if we keep him, she said. I should have listened. One night, I woke up after midnight and heard the wind hitting my bedroom window. I thought about Whiskers alone in the freezing shed. I worried that the towel was not warm enough, so I got out of bed and put on my coat. The house was silent. I walked downstairs, opened the back door, and crossed the yard. Snow pushed through the tops of my boots. The shed door was partly open. I knew I had closed it earlier. Inside, the bowl was overturned. The towel had been dragged into the middle of the floor. I searched behind boxes, under shelves, and beneath the broken workbench. Whiskers was gone. I told myself he had escaped. Part of me felt relieved. Maybe he had run away. Maybe he would find another family. I went back inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around me. I closed the door quietly and started toward the stairs. Then I heard a meow. It came from the kitchen. I stopped. The sound was soft, almost too weak to hear. I took one step toward it. Then came a crunch. It sounded like chewing. Slow, wet chewing. Not the quick bite of a dog or the messy tearing of an animal. This was careful, patient. The sound of someone taking their time with something they did not want to waste. I moved closer to the kitchen. The overhead light was on. My father stood at the counter with his back to me. At first, I thought he was eating leftovers. Then I noticed the shape of his shoulders. They were too wide. They sloped in a way human shoulders should not. His shirt stretched across his back, and something moved beneath the cloth. It looked as if several arms had been folded under his skin. Another small meow came from the counter. My father lifted something. A tiny paw hung between his fingers. I could not breathe. Then his head began to change. It did not snap or break. It opened. The skin of his face split from the top of his forehead down through his chin. The two sides pulled away from each other in thick, muscular folds. His nose flattened and disappeared. His eyes slid outward, resting near the sides of his head. Inside his face were rows of pale teeth. There were too many to count. They were not hard and straight like human teeth. They bent and curled, moving on their own. They worked inward from every direction, pulling food deeper into the dark space behind them. Something small and covered in orange fur disappeared between those teeth. There was a sharp cry. Then another crunch. I knew it was Whiskers. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. I stood in the doorway and watched my father eat the kitten we had saved. He did not seem angry. He did not seem hungry in the way a person is hungry. He looked calm, almost peaceful. That frightened me more than anything. Then a hand touched my shoulder. Pain shot down my spine. For one terrible second, it was not a human hand. It was too heavy, too broad, and there were more fingers than there should have been. The pressure felt wrong, as if the hand did not understand how gently a mother was supposed to touch her child. Then it changed. The fingers shortened. The palm softened. The weight became familiar. My mother leaned close to my ear. "Go back to bed," she whispered. I turned my head just enough to see her. Her face was not finished. The skin around her mouth was still loose. Her cheeks were shifting into place. One eye was higher than the other, and something narrow and black moved behind her lips. She smiled at me. As she did, her features settled. The skin tightened. Her eyes moved into the correct position. Within seconds, she looked like the woman our neighbors knew. My mother. Human. Normal. I went upstairs without speaking. My memory of the rest of that night is unclear, I remember lying under my blanket with my eyes open. I remember hearing footsteps in the hallway. I remember someone standing outside my door for a long time. At one point, the doorknob turned. The door opened a few inches. Something breathed from the other side. It stayed there until morning. At breakfast, my father read the newspaper. My mother made pancakes. My sister came downstairs and asked where Whiskers was. My mother did not hesitate. "It must have run off," she said gently. "Strays do that." My sister began to cry. My father kept reading. I stared at a dark stain near the cuff of his shirt. A small piece of orange fur was caught in the thread. He noticed me looking. Slowly, he smiled. That morning, I lost something I never got back. It was not only innocence. It was trust. A door closed inside me, and behind it, a new set of rules appeared. Do not keep things you love. Do not bring strangers home. Do not draw attention. Do not let them know you are watching. Most importantly, never question what your family is. After that night, I began noticing more. My parents' faces sometimes lost their shape when they were tired. Their features would slide for a second before returning to the correct place. My father's jaw would hang too low when he yawned. My mother's eyes sometimes reflected light like an animal's. My sister changed as she grew older. She could stretch her neck farther than any person should. I once saw her reach over the back of the couch without moving her body. Another time, she cut her hand while washing a glass. The wound did not bleed red. A clear, thick liquid came out first, followed by something dark that quickly disappeared beneath the skin. She covered it with a towel and told me I had imagined it. At dinner, meat vanished from the table faster than it should have. My parents chewed politely when guests were around, but when we were alone, they barely chewed at all. They seemed to pull food into their mouths. Their plates were always clean. Not mostly clean, completely clean. No grease, no crumbs, no bones. Sometimes even the edges of the plates had small bite marks. But when neighbors visited, my family became perfect. My mother smiled warmly and offered coffee. My father shook hands and asked about work. My sister laughed at the right moments. They knew exactly how long to hold eye contact and when to look away. I learned to watch them watching other people. That was when they were most convincing. They copied small things. The way our neighbor crossed his legs. The way a teacher touched her hair. The way someone raised an eyebrow before making a joke. Human behavior was something they studied. Then they wore it. I began to wonder whether the bodies I saw were real at all, or whether they were only costumes made of skin, muscle, and memory. I had no real friends growing up. I avoided sleepovers, birthday parties, and school projects that might bring someone to our house. I was always afraid a friend would stay too late. After sunset, my family changed. They moved differently in the dark. Their steps became lighter, almost silent. Sometimes I heard scratching inside the walls, though I knew the sound came from the hallway. Some nights I woke to soft voices speaking a language that sounded wet and broken. I never understood the words. Once I looked through the crack beneath my bedroom door and saw several shadows moving across the hallway. There were only 4 people in the house. I counted 7 shadows. At school, I tried to tell someone only once. I was in middle school. A boy named Daniel sat beside me in science class. We were not close, but he was kind to me. And one day I told him that my parents were not human. He laughed because he thought I was joking. When I did not laugh, he asked what I meant. I told him about my father's face opening. I told him about Whiskers. I told him my mother could change the shape of her hands. Daniel stared at me for a long time. Then he told everyone. By lunch, students were asking whether my father had horns. Someone drew a picture of my mother eating babies. Now, for the rest of the year, people called me Monster Boy. The school counselor asked me questions. My parents were called in. They sat across from the counselor, looking concerned and embarrassed. My mother cried. My father said I had always had a powerful imagination. On the way home, no one spoke. That night, my father came into my room. He sat on the edge of my bed and placed one hand on my leg. The mattress sank under his weight. "You must be careful," he said. His voice sounded normal, but another voice moved underneath it, speaking the same words a second later. "You are old enough to understand now." I asked what he meant. His fingers tightened around my knee. For a second, the skin on his hand became thin, and I saw several long shapes moving inside it. "People hurt what they do not understand," he said, "and families protect their own." Then he stood and left. I never told anyone again. I left for college as soon as I could. I chose a school several hours away in a city where no one knew my family. I packed only what fit in 2 bags. My mother hugged me at the door. She held me too tightly, and I felt something shift in her chest. My father shook my hand. My sister stood behind them, smiling. As I got into the car, she mouthed 2 words. "Come back." I did not. For years, I avoided holidays. I always had an excuse. Exams, work, money, distance, illness. At first, my parents argued. Then they became strangely calm. My mother called every Sunday. She never asked much about my life. She only wanted to know whether I was eating, sleeping, and staying healthy. My father asked whether I had made friends. My sister asked whether I had met anyone special. Their questions never sounded loving to me. They sounded like someone checking on livestock. Still, years passed without anything happening. I built a normal life. I found a job. I rented an apartment. I learned to enjoy simple things like eating dinner in silence and leaving the curtains open at night. Then I met the woman who is now my fiancée. We met 2 years ago at a friend's birthday party. She was kind in a way that felt deliberate. She listened when people spoke. She remembered small details. She believed people were usually better than their worst moments. Most of all, she believed in family. Her parents lived close by. They call each other often. They argue, forgive, celebrate birthdays, and show up when someone needs help. The first time I had dinner with them, I could barely speak. No one watched me too carefully. No one copied my movements. No one opened their face. My fiancé noticed I was uncomfortable and squeezed my hand under the table. I almost cried. She knows I am distant from my family. I told her my childhood was difficult. I told her my parents were strict and that we had never been close. For a while, that was enough. Then we got engaged. After that, the questions became harder to avoid. She wanted to meet the people who raised me. She wanted to see where I came from. She said marriage meant bringing 2 lives together, and she could not understand mine if I kept half of it locked away. I kept delaying. Then Thanksgiving came closer. 3 weeks ago, my mother called and invited us. I had not given her my fiancé's number. I had not told her our wedding date. I had barely told her anything. Still, she knew my fiancé's full name. She knew where she worked. She knew we were planning to visit my fiancé's parents for Christmas. When I asked how she knew, my mother laughed. A mother always knows what is happening in her child's life, she said. After the call, I checked every window in the apartment. My fiancé thought I was having a panic attack. Maybe I was. Tonight, she finally asked whether I was ashamed of my family. I did not know how to answer. How could I tell her that I was not ashamed? I was terrified. I am still terrified. But fear is not the worst part. The worst part is that I do not know whether she will believe me. If I tell her the truth, she may think I am sick. She may think I invented these memories to explain a painful childhood. She may cancel the wedding. She may tell someone. And what would happen then? Would my family find out? Would they come here? Maybe they already know what I am thinking. My fiancé is in the bedroom now, folding clothes into a suitcase. Every few minutes, I hear her moving through the apartment. She is excited. She bought my mother a candle, and my father an expensive bottle of whiskey. She even found a toy for my sister's little boy. Yes, my sister has a child now. I have never met him. In the only photo she sent me, he looked almost human. Almost. I keep looking at the car keys on the table. Part of me wants to take them and drive away alone. Another part wants to tell my fiancé everything and beg her not to go. But there is another fear I have never spoken aloud. What if she meets them and sees nothing wrong? What if they are warm, polite, and perfectly human? What if my father's face never opens? What if my mother's hands stay the right shape? What if my sister laughs at my childhood stories and asks why I stayed away so long? My fiancé will look at me and realize I spent my life running from ordinary people. She will wonder what else I have imagined. She will wonder whether she is safe with me. I have spent my whole life certain that my family are monsters wearing human skin. Every choice I made came from that belief. Every friendship I avoided. Every holiday I missed. Every lie I told. But there is something I never allowed myself to consider. If they were able to live among people for decades without being discovered, what does that mean? If they raised children without teachers, doctors, neighbors, or police noticing anything, how was that possible? If they taught my sister how to hide, did they also teach me? I do not remember changing shape. I do not remember opening my face. I do not remember being hungry the way they were. But memory is not proof. Sometimes when I am alone, I catch myself staring at my reflection for too long. I wait for it to blink before I do. I watch my eyes and wonder whether they are in the right place. Once, while brushing my teeth, I opened my mouth and thought I saw something move behind my tongue. I closed it quickly. Another time, I cut my finger while cooking. For 1 second, before the blood appeared, the wound looked clear. I told myself it was water from the sink. I have dreams about eating. In them, I am never hungry. I am only empty. I wake with my jaw aching. Last month, my fiancé said I had been making strange sounds in my sleep. Wet, clicking sounds. She said it sounded like I was trying to speak. I asked whether she understood the words. She said no. I was relieved. Then she repeated one of the sounds. I understood it. I do not know how, but I understood. It meant home. My fiancé just called from the bedroom and asked whether I have packed my clothes. I told her I was finishing something for work. That is why I am writing this. I need advice from someone willing to believe me, even a little. Do I tell my fiancé the truth and risk losing her before our marriage has even begun? Do I show her this confession and watch her face change as she decides whether I am dangerous? Or do I stay silent, get into the car, and drive back to the house where I learned never to ask questions? Maybe I will arrive and discover that my memories were wrong. Maybe fear changed what I saw. Maybe a lonely child turned strict parents into monsters, because that was easier than admitting they did not love him. But I can still hear the crunch in the kitchen. I can still see orange fur on my father's sleeve. I can still feel my mother's hand changing shape on my shoulder. Those memories are real. At least, I think they are. There is one more thing. 10 minutes ago, my mother sent me a message. She wrote, "We are so happy you are coming home. Your fiancé looks lovely. Do not worry. We will make her feel like part of the family." I never sent my mother a picture of my fiancé. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I saw my reflection in the glass. For a moment, my smile was wider than it should have been. I do not remember smiling. My fiancé is coming down the hallway now. The car is packed. The keys are still on the table. In less than 12 hours, I may finally learn whether I was wrong about my family, or whether I was wrong about myself. Story 4. Everything we believe we understand about hate is both true and false at the same time. Before this happened, I thought I knew how the world worked. I believed evil came from ordinary people making terrible choices. I believed monsters were only symbols we invented to explain the darkest parts of human nature. Then I met him. After that awful encounter, everything I believed changed forever. I can still see his body standing in the darkness. I can still see those glowing red eyes fixed on me. Nothing about him followed the rules of nature or reason, yet he was as real as the ground beneath my feet. He stood there not only as a creature ready to attack, but also as a teacher prepared to show me how little I understood about hatred, fear, and humanity. At the time, my life was already difficult enough without supernatural monsters entering it. I had student loans hanging over my head. In the economy we were living in, who didn't? The previous few years had been financially painful for my wife and me. We had struggled with rent, food, medical costs, school fees, and all the little expenses that appeared without warning. Still, we were happy. We had a loving home, and my girls meant more to me than anything else in the world. During the final year of my bachelor's degree, my wife, Regina, became pregnant. Neither of us even considered ending the pregnancy. We had always wanted children. We had simply hoped to wait until I finished school and found a stable career. Life, however, does not always follow the plans we make for it. We used to joke that some souls were simply too eager to enter the world. That was how our daughter, Isabella, had somehow defeated the birth control and arrived earlier than expected. That was my Bella. She had been interrupting our plans in the most beautiful way from the moment she began growing inside her mother. She was bright, fearless, loud, curious, and full of energy. She was a shining little star in a world that would probably try to dim her light again and again. Not if I could stop it. Around the time Isabella was born, I had just entered a Doctor of Physical Therapy program. It would take 3 long years to complete. By the time I was nearing the end of the program, our little angel was about to turn 3. We planned a huge family celebration for her birthday that weekend. It would be the biggest gathering we had held since the day she was born. Mexican families tend to be close. When we celebrate, we do not believe in doing things halfway. It did not matter that Isabella was only turning 3. To our family, that was more than enough reason to cook too much food, invite too many people, play music all day, and continue the party long after the birthday girl became tired. Regina, Her mother, my abuelita, and several aunts and cousins from both sides of the family were preparing a full feast. Even now, thinking about the food makes my mouth water. There were enchiladas mineras, bowls of white pozole, slow-cooked carnitas, red rice, and tamales filled with roasted peppers and melted cheese. Those tamales were always my favorite. Abuelita was also making her rich dulce de leche cake, which, in my opinion, was the only proper cake for a family celebration. The house was already alive with noise and movement. Isabella ran around in a pink princess dress with a soft, frilly skirt. The top had pictures of Bingo and Bluey, her favorite characters at the time. She and her cousins chased balloons while some of the teenagers helped blow up more. The younger children jumped from couch cushions to rugs, pretending the floor was burning lava. Their laughter filled every room. For a few minutes, I stood near the doorway and watched them. I wanted to stay. Every part of me wanted to forget about work and spend the whole day with my daughter. But we needed the money. "Okay, Princess," I said, bending down and lifting Isabella into my arms. "Papi has to go to work now." I kissed her cheek loudly, trying to make her laugh. Instead, her small face became serious. "No, Papi. Not today. It's my birthday." The way she said birthday made my heart tighten. "I know, sweetness. I'll be back before the party starts, I promise." I hugged her as tightly as I could without hurting her. She wrapped her soft arms around my neck and began covering my face with kisses. "Please don't go, Papi." She placed one little hand against my cheek. Then she began counting. 1, 2, 3. She stopped and thought hard. 6, 8. With every number, she kissed my cheeks, forehead, or nose. Her counting was terrible, but her love was perfect. My chest hurt with guilt. "I'm sorry, Bella. I have to go." "Okay, but first I give you more kisses." "I already have enough kisses," I told her, laughing even though I wanted to cry. "I'll be home soon, I promise." I placed her gently back on the floor. At the time, I did not know I had just made a promise I would not be able to keep. Isabella stared at me with disappointment in her large brown eyes. For one quiet second, I almost called my supervisor and told him I was not coming. Then she turned and ran back toward her cousins. I remained near the door, fighting with myself. I desperately needed the job. I had already asked for the day off, but my request had been refused. Recent government raids had caused several workers to stop coming, and the farm was short on staff. It was also the busiest part of the harvest season. I felt pulled in two directions. "It'll be okay," Regina said as she came toward me. She kissed my cheek and rested one hand on my arm. "She's 3 years old. She'll be so busy with the other kids that she'll hardly notice you're gone. Then you'll come home, and she'll be happy again." I smiled weakly. I kissed my wife goodbye, opened the door, and walked out. As I drove away, I could not stop thinking about Isabella. I hated how little time I spent with her during the week. Sometimes I only saw her for an hour between work, school, studying, and sleep. An hour here and another hour there did not feel like enough. I wanted to be present in her life. At the same time, I wanted to give her a better life than the one I had known. My grandparents had come from Mexico to the United States, hoping to create more opportunities for their children and grandchildren. They had performed exhausting work for very little money. They picked produce under the hot sun, washed dishes late into the night, cleaned offices, and accepted jobs that left their bodies aching. Regina's parents had lived a similar story. I told myself that I was making the right choice. I was working so Isabella would not have to struggle the way we had. The money from the farm was too good to lose. After marijuana became legal in the state, maintaining and harvesting the plants paid much better than seasonal fruit and vegetable work in the Salinas Valley. I only worked there on weekends. The labor was difficult, but I enjoyed using my body and spending time outside beneath the open sky. Usually, the farm felt like an escape. During the week, I worked nights as an orderly in a hospital. The hospital was clean, cold, and filled with artificial light. Whenever things became quiet, I opened my books and studied. Compared with that, the farm felt alive. In a single weekend, I sometimes earned almost as much as I made during an entire week at the hospital. Regina worked as a receptionist at a local hotel while Isabella attended preschool. Even with both of us working, money remained tight. California rent was painfully expensive, and the cost seemed to rise every year. We simply needed to survive a little longer. Soon, I would finish school. Then I would take the National Physical Therapy examination. If I passed, I could finally begin my career as a physical therapist. We were so close. My thoughts were interrupted when I turned onto the damaged dirt road leading toward the farm. The road was filled with deep holes, so I slowed my Honda to less than 10 miles per hour. I drove around a bend. My stomach immediately tightened. Far ahead of me, perhaps 100 feet away, dark figures stood against the bright morning light. At first, I hoped they were ordinary workers. Then my eyes adjusted. They were not workers. The government called them freedom enforcers. Most people knew them by another name, one that rhymed with nice. I am still careful about writing that name. Stories and videos using it often disappeared from the internet. Accounts were suspended, articles were removed, and creators were accused of breaking rules no one fully understood. Some independent journalists and online commentators had started calling them hats because of the dark coverings they wore over their heads and faces. The government's attack on free speech had started slowly. YouTube channels lost money for supposed policy violations. Small news outlets received massive fines because of suspicious charges. Social media accounts disappeared without explanation. People always find ways to speak, however. The phrase hat enforcers became a code people used online. Everyone knew exactly who it meant. History had seen this kind of thing before. Whenever powerful leaders became afraid of criticism, ordinary people were forced to become creative simply to tell the truth without being silenced or taken away. By the time I clearly recognized the hats, I was already too close. They had finally come to the farm. Workers had been disappearing from the schedule for weeks because they were afraid this would happen. Now their fear had become real. I was around 50 feet from the officers when I began turning my car around. Before I could complete the turn, an officer appeared beside my window as though he had stepped out of the air itself. He struck the glass with his baton. The impact made me jump. I was surprised the window did not break. "Get out of the car, sir." I lowered the window. "I'm a citizen," I said quickly. I lifted myself slightly from the seat, trying to reach my wallet. I kept my driver's license, passport, and even a copy of my birth certificate with me because I had feared this exact situation. Before I understood what he was doing, the officer reached through the open window, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. "I'm a United States citizen," I told him. "I was born here." I tried to remain calm, but panic was already rising inside me. My own voice sounded strange, high and weak. The officer grabbed the collar of my shirt and screamed directly into my face. "I told you to get out of the car." Okay. I tried again to reach toward my back pocket. He twisted my arm behind me and slammed me face down onto the dirt road. Pain shot through my shoulder. Dust entered my mouth and nose. I coughed and tried to spit the dirt from my tongue. "My documents are in my back pocket," I said. "Please look. My passport is there." He either did not hear me or did not care. He pulled my wrists together and secured them with a plastic zip tie. Then he dragged me to my feet so violently that burning pain spread through my left shoulder. "No, God," I thought. "This cannot be happening." I continued telling him to check my papers. He ignored every word. The officer forced me toward a dark van. Several of my co-workers were already inside. He pushed me through the open doors and slammed them shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me. The fear inside that small space felt almost solid. At first, I could only listen. I heard fast breathing, quiet crying, whispered prayers, and angry curses spoken under people's breath. The smell of sweat and terror filled the van. There was no air conditioning, and the September heat turned the metal walls into an oven. I raised my head and waited for my eyes to adjust. Directly across from me, two red lights flashed in the darkness. They looked like eyes. The red points blinked twice. Then they disappeared. A cold shiver moved through me despite the heat. Something older than thought awakened inside my body. It was the natural fear an animal feels when it senses a predator hiding nearby. Cold sweat ran down my back. Had I really seen those eyes? I do not know how long we remained in the van before it started moving. I also cannot say how long the journey lasted. It could have been 30 minutes. It could have been 2 hours. A terrified mind loses its ability to measure time properly. I had studied how fear and trauma affected the brain because I hoped to help injured patients one day. I tried to use that knowledge to calm myself. It did not work. My thoughts returned again and again to Regina and Isabella. They would be worried when I did not come home. My daughter would not understand why Poppy had promised to attend her birthday party and then disappeared. Surely the officers could not keep me long. They would check my documents. They would see that I had been born in the United States. I paid taxes. I volunteered in my community. I worked in a hospital and studied for a respected medical career. They had made a mistake. They would have to release me. Eventually, the van stopped. The rear doors opened, and harsh sunlight struck my eyes. After sitting in darkness for so long, the brightness felt painful. When my vision cleared, I saw several armed men standing outside. Their guns were pointed toward us. "If any of you try anything," one of them shouted, "we will shoot. Do what you're told, and you might leave with your miserable lives." They unloaded us from the van and forced us into a line. More guards stood nearby with their weapons ready while other officers searched us. Their hands moved roughly across our bodies. They pushed, grabbed, and touched us without care, treating us like objects instead of human beings. Fear makes the mind travel to strange places. As one of the guards searched the person beside me, I remembered a conversation I had recently shared with Regina. She had told me, "Women naturally fear men because men can use physical power against us. When a woman walks alone down a dark street or through an empty parking garage, she doesn't know which unfamiliar man might try to control or hurt her. That means she has to remain alert around all of them. We never want to be placed in a situation where we must fight someone simply to remain in control of our own bodies." At the time, I had understood her words in an intellectual way. Standing helplessly beneath the hands of those guards, I understood them differently. When the officer reached me, hope and terror fought inside my chest. His hand entered my back pocket. He removed my wallet, passport, and birth certificate. There it was. Proof. All he needed to do was look. He opened the documents and moved through them quickly, but he was not reading. He was only checking whether I had hidden a blade or some other weapon between the pages. Then he pushed everything back into my pocket and continued down the line. He had held the proof of my citizenship in his hands. It meant nothing to him. The final piece of hope inside me broke. Would they deport me? I knew I could eventually return if I found the right lawyer and proved who I was, but how long would that take? Days, weeks, months? I would miss school. I would lose my job. Our income would stop. Regina might not be able to pay the rent alone. Isabella would think I had abandoned her. The guards marched us into what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. Chain link cages lined the walls. Each one looked large enough to hold perhaps 10 people, though I later learned they often forced more inside. Dirty mattresses lay on the hard concrete floors. Every cage had a large orange bucket in one corner. There were no toilets, no privacy, no dignity. They pushed me into one of the cages as though I were an animal being placed in a pen. But even animals deserved better treatment than this. The women were taken to cages on one side of the warehouse. The men were placed on the other. 10 of us entered a space measuring perhaps 15 feet by 15 feet. The metal door closed behind us with a heavy sound that seemed final. The warehouse became strangely quiet. Prisoners spoke only in whispers. It seemed everyone understood that shouting might attract the attention of the guards, and their attention could lead to violence. The officers, however, made plenty of noise. They laughed with each other. They joked, shouted, and slapped one another on the back. To them, this was another successful workday. They had gathered the human livestock and placed it in cages. Soon, they would send us south, to wherever they believed people like us belonged. I slowly lowered myself to the concrete floor. I had not cried many times in my adult life, but tears burned at the edges of my eyes. Then I heard a sound that stopped those tears and froze my blood. It was soft laughter, not the loud, careless laughter of the guards. This was quiet and cold. I looked up. Across the cage sat a man whose eyes glowed red. He blinked twice. Then he smiled. His mouth was filled with yellow, uneven teeth that looked too sharp and too numerous to belong to a human being. I pushed myself backward until my shoulders struck the chain-link fence. I blinked hard. When I looked again, he appeared normal. He was simply a man sitting across from me. Was I hallucinating? Had the shock of the day damaged my mind? Was my brain creating a nightmare because reality itself had become too terrible to accept? The man continued to laugh softly. No one else in the cage looked at him. Then he spoke in a voice barely louder than a whisper, yet I heard every word clearly. Eres demasiado bueno para estar aquí, amigo. Pero aquí estás, y aquí te vas a quedar. You are too good to be here, my friend. But here you are, and here you will remain. My eyes widened. I wanted to ask who he was, but my tongue felt thick and useless. There was something about him that terrified me more deeply than the armed hat enforcers outside the cage. Later, each prisoner received one small 16-ounce bottle of water and 2 protein bars. I immediately suspected this was not a meal. It was a ration intended to last the entire day. I decided to be careful. A small amount of sunlight entered through openings near the warehouse ceiling. By watching the movement of the light, I tried to estimate the time. Every few hours, I ate half a protein bar and drank roughly 1/4 of the bottle. It was not enough to satisfy my hunger or thirst, but it was enough to keep something inside my stomach. As the day passed, I noticed that the strange man across from me had placed his food and water beside him. He never touched them. He did not speak again. His eyes did not glow red. Still, he continued watching me. A small smile remained on his lips, as though he knew a secret and was waiting for the perfect moment to share it. I did not want to hear that secret. When night came, the temperature inside the warehouse dropped. I shared one of the dirty mattresses with a co-worker I barely knew. We lay with our backs against each other because there was not enough room to sleep comfortably. My body was exhausted, but I doubted sleep would come. I had chosen the outer edge of the mattress because it allowed me to face the strange man. I wanted to watch him. A disturbing idea had entered my mind. What if I was the only person who could see him? Not one of the other prisoners had looked directly at him. Of course, most people avoided eye contact with everyone, so perhaps that meant nothing. Still, the thought would not leave me. The man stared. I wanted to shout at him in Spanish. Go to hell. What is your problem? Find someone else to watch. But what if he was mentally unstable? If I angered him, he might cause a fight. The guards would hear the noise, and all of us could be punished. So I remained silent. I shifted beneath his attention, trying to understand what he wanted. Eventually, I closed my eyes and forced myself to rest. Throughout the night, I moved in and out of broken sleep. Every time I opened my eyes, the man was still staring. Sometimes his eyes shone red in the darkness. Sometimes his mouth stretched into an impossible grin. Rows of sharp teeth filled his mouth like the teeth of a shark. Each time I looked, there seemed to be more of them. Then I would suddenly wake and see an ordinary human face. The experience made me question my sanity. By the next day, the smell inside the cage had become almost unbearable. Sweat, urine, and human waste filled the air. My muscles hurt from sitting and sleeping on the concrete. I stood slowly and walked toward the orange bucket. No one had emptied it. I tried not to look inside while I relieved myself, but movement caught my attention. A fly had landed in the waste and become trapped. Its wet wings beat uselessly as it struggled to climb the smooth side of the bucket. My urine made its efforts even more difficult. Watching that tiny creature created a sudden feeling of panic inside me. It was trapped, helpless, humiliated. It kept trying to escape from a place designed to hold filth. I hated that I understood exactly how it felt. I turned away, pulled up my trousers, and returned to the mattress. I sat on the edge with my head lowered between my knees. The next day was almost identical to the first. 1 bottle of water, 2 protein bars, no answers, no legal help, no chance to call my family. The strange man continued to refuse all food and water. By then, it was more than unusual. A normal person should have shown some sign of hunger, thirst, exhaustion, or physical discomfort. He showed nothing. He glanced at the pile of unopened protein bars and water bottles beside him. Then he looked at me and smiled. The message was clear. He was tempting me. My own food was nearly gone. My mouth felt dry and my stomach cramped with hunger. Still, a powerful instinct warned me not to ask him for anything. Do not accept his food. Do not touch his water. Do not make a deal. I could not explain where that warning came from. It felt older than language, as if some hidden part of my soul recognized the danger before my mind did. If I gave in, something worse than imprisonment would happen. I had experienced a similar warning when I held Isabella before leaving for work. Something inside me had said, "Stay home." I had ignored it. I would not make the same mistake twice. My sweet Bella. I had disappointed her. Her birthday party had probably ended without me. She would have kept watching the door, expecting Poppy to walk inside because Poppy had promised. By then, Regina would know something was wrong. She would have called the farm. Perhaps the owner had told her about the raid. I hoped they were trying to help us. The owner, Mr. Johnson, was a good man. He hated what the Hats were doing. Losing workers cost him money, but his anger was not only about profit. He cared about the people who worked for him. He saw us as human beings, not machines. That quality had become rare. I needed to hold on to hope. Hope was the only thing I had left. That night, I lay on the mattress and tried to calm my thoughts. Perhaps I had truly become calm. Perhaps I had simply separated myself emotionally from what was happening. There was nothing I could do except wait for someone outside to rescue us. I slowly looked around the cage, hoping the strange man had finally stopped watching me. He had not. I could feel his attention even before our eyes met. It felt like tiny, invisible insects moving across my skin. You are being watched. When I finally looked directly at him, his smile became wider. I had never seen him at the marijuana farm. It was possible he was a new employee and had started on the morning of the raid. But that explanation did not feel right. Why was he here? The longer I watched him, the more certain I became that he could leave whenever he wished. It was not a logical belief. The cage was locked. Armed guards surrounded the building. Yet I felt sure he was present by choice. He had not eaten. He had not drunk anything. He had not slept. He had not used the bucket. No one had spoken to him. No one had looked at him. It was as though he did not exist for anyone except me. Perhaps he was a spy placed in the cage by the Hat enforcers. Maybe they used him to frighten prisoners and collect information. Psychological warfare. That was what this had become. Another restless night began. At some point, I woke covered in cold sweat. The guards were laughing somewhere outside the cage. Their voices echoed through the warehouse. The sound made my stomach twist. Nausea rose into my throat. For a moment, I considered crawling toward the bucket to vomit. Then I imagined placing my face above the hole filled with urine and waste. I imagined the contents splashing against me. I forced myself to breathe. I would not vomit. I would swallow it if necessary. I tried to sit up. My body did not move. Panic exploded through me. I struggled harder. But my arms and legs remained fixed against the mattress, as though invisible ropes held me down. Then I looked upward. The man stood above me. His eyes burned bright red. His mouth stretched into a monstrous opening filled with endless rows of teeth. My heartbeat became painfully fast. Sweat ran into my eyes. Terror filled my chest so completely that I thought my heart might stop. I was certain I would die. He had come to feed, and I would be his first victim. He spoke in perfect English. The Spanish accent was gone. No, amigo. Your essence is not seasoned with the corruption I desire. His face began to change. It became the face of one man, then another, then another. Hundreds of faces moved across his skull. Some belonged to people I recognized from history. Others were complete strangers. He became white, black, Asian, Latino, and indigenous. He became male and female, young and old. There seemed to be no limit to the bodies he could copy. My lungs worked desperately, pulling in short and painful breaths. I coughed and fought against the sickness in my throat. My body remained trapped, but I could still speak. Que airs, I whispered. What are you? The creature smiled. The teeth inside his mouth multiplied. Each pointed fang grew longer. Small pieces of red flesh were trapped between them. I knew what the pieces were. Human meat. Blood leaked from the corners of his wide mouth. "I am humanity's worst nightmares made real," he said. "And I am also your savior." He suddenly threw his face close to mine. "Amigo!" He shouted the word like a cruel adult frightening a helpless child for entertainment. His spit struck my face. I woke with a violent gasp. I sat up, pulling air into my lungs. The guards were still laughing in the distance, but their laughter now seemed weak compared with the cold voice of the creature. I searched the cage. Then I counted the prisoners. I counted again. Someone was missing. The strange man was gone. I did not sleep for the rest of that night. I was no longer sure I would ever sleep peacefully again. The experience had felt too real to be an ordinary dream. I had never suffered from sleep paralysis before. Perhaps the stress of the arrest had caused it, but I did not truly believe that. The creature's disappearance made the experience feel even more real. After I woke, the air in the warehouse changed. A restless energy moved through the building, like the silent pressure that comes before a powerful storm. You do not need to see dark clouds or check the weather to know something is approaching. I felt it with such strength that I could not sit still. The other prisoners rested against the cage walls or lay on the mattresses. I paced back and forth. It was foolish to waste energy. After 2 days with almost no food or water, I should have been too weak to move. Adrenaline kept me awake. Something was coming. I did not know what it was, but I knew the red-eyed creature would be part of it. As darkness returned, the pressure inside my chest grew worse. I did not lie down. Instead, I walked to the chain-link wall and wrapped my fingers around the thin metal. My head dropped forward. My eyes moved toward the orange bucket. It had become more than a toilet. It represented what the guards had turned us into. I felt tears rising again. Take 2 people from the room, I thought. One white and one brown. Force both of them to use the same filthy bucket. Would the waste of one person look cleaner? Would it smell better? Would the bucket care about the color of the person using it? Of course not. We all bled. We all feared pain. We all loved our families. We all produced the same waste. Yet human beings continued finding reasons to treat one another as less than human. Why? How could people do this? I began to cry. Historical tragedies I had once read about as names and dates suddenly felt real. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, Camp O'Donnell, Cabanatuan, Manzanar, Tule Lake, Heart Mountain, slavery, domestic abuse, child abuse, wars built on top of older wars, with every generation believing its violence was somehow different or necessary. Why could humanity not choose love? My tears slipped through the openings in the metal fence. I no longer cared whether anyone saw me. There was no shame in crying for a species that repeatedly refused to learn from its own pain. Then a voice hissed near me. "Ah, ahora entiendes por qué tu carne tiene un sabor amargo en mi lengua. Now you understand why your flesh tastes bitter on my tongue." My tears stopped instantly. I raised my head, expecting the man to be standing beside me. The cage was empty except for the prisoners I already knew. I turned toward the center of the warehouse. He was outside the cage. The strange man stood beneath a single hanging lamp. The light fell across his body. Then he began to change. Muscles grew beneath his skin, swelling larger and larger until the human body could no longer contain them. The flesh split apart like a costume being torn from the inside. He shed the shape of a man. Something enormous emerged. Long claws extended from his hands, each one shaped like a polished blade. Dark fur covered his body, but the fur did not remain solid. It shifted between smoke and shadow, moving even when the air was still. As the transformation continued, a strange feeling of recognition entered my mind. I knew this creature. I had seen it before, yet I could not remember where. The thought disappeared as its face changed. Its eyes became huge red orbs. Thick drops of blood rolled from them like tears. Somehow I understood that those tears contained the memory of every act of violence humans had committed against one another. Its claws carried the scars and echoes of every hate crime. Its mouth opened wider. Rows of yellow, broken, razor-sharp teeth filled the darkness. The creature snapped them together eagerly. It was hungry. The guards did not see its true form. The prisoners did not see it either. Only I could witness what stood beneath the light. When the transformation ended, the beast looked directly at me. Even with that terrible mouth, I knew it was smiling. Then hell broke loose. The creature launched itself toward the guards. Everything happened too quickly. It grabbed one man and tore his arm from his body. The sound was like wet cardboard ripping in half. The guard's scream shattered the false calm of the warehouse. Other officers reached for their weapons. Some moved quickly. Others stood frozen, unable to understand what they were seeing. Gunfire exploded. Pop, pop, pop. The smell of smoke and burned powder filled the air. The creature moved faster than my eyes could follow. For moments at a time, I saw only broken images of it appearing and disappearing around the room, like a damaged television struggling to form a clear picture. To the guards, it might have looked like a shadow or a blur. To me, it was fully visible. It moved from one victim to another. Its claws opened bodies. Its teeth tore through flesh and bone. It consumed hearts, lungs, and other organs. It drank the blood so completely that almost none reached the ground. Every few seconds, it stopped and looked toward me. Its shape darkened the shadows around it. Then it smiled. More screams filled the warehouse. One officer ran toward a cage holding several women. He struggled with a ring of keys, apparently hoping to hide inside with the prisoners. He unlocked the cage. Before he could enter, the beast reached him. One claw opened the man's stomach. His intestines fell out in wet loops. The creature caught them in its mouth and pulled. The officer screamed. The beast bit through the middle of his body. Then it carried the still living man away from the cage and threw him toward the other guards. It behaved like a cruel cat playing with wounded prey. The women screamed and pressed themselves into a corner. They held one another tightly. The cage door was wide open. They could have escaped, but terror had taken control of their bodies. Gunfire continued. The warehouse became a battlefield, though only one side had any real power. The monster moved through the officers as easily as a lion entering a nest of frightened animals. Some guards ran outside into the darkness. Others stayed and continued firing, believing bullets could stop what they did not understand. The weapons had no effect. The screams seemed endless. The gunshots seemed endless. Blood, smoke, and terror filled the entire building. My body remained ready to run, even though there was nowhere to go. Yet beneath the fear, a quiet understanding entered my mind. The beast will not kill you. It will not kill most of the prisoners. You know why. I watched with horror, unable to look away. When every hat enforcer inside the warehouse had been killed, the creature turned toward the cages. One by one, it tore the doors away. Most prisoners were left untouched, but from several cages, it selected particular people. It dragged them out and fed on them. When it reached my cage, my heart began racing again. Still, I knew it would not choose me. The monster grabbed one of my cellmates. As it bit into him, nausea rose into my throat. I fought not to vomit. I knew I would survive. But why? Why was the creature killing some prisoners and sparing others? Why not all of us? Why not me? I do not know whether I spoke the question or only thought it. The beast looked directly at me. Blood flowed from its teeth. It tilted its head. Then its voice entered my thoughts without passing through my ears. I feed on the strongest fears. There is no fear stronger than the fear hidden inside racism, bigotry, misogyny, cruelty, and narcissism. All humans are afraid, but not all allow fear to lead them down the darkest path. The message filled my mind. The creature was not choosing people based on uniforms, race, citizenship, or whether they had been guards or prisoners. It was feeding on something inside them, hatred. After delivering the message, the beast turned and ran through the open warehouse doors. Its body disappeared into the darkness. Silence slowly returned. For several minutes, no one moved. We waited, listening for gunfire, screams, or the return of the creature. When the night finally felt safe, we left the cages. Those who could walk helped those who were weak or injured. We stepped around what remained of the dead and moved into the darkness outside. None of us knew exactly where we were. We simply chose a direction and kept moving. We walked through the night. Some people became separated. Others stayed in small groups. By sunrise, through luck, instinct, or the mercy of God, many of us found roads and towns we recognized. Eventually, I made my way home. There was never any news about what happened in the warehouse. I expected the government to blame the prisoners. I imagined reports claiming that detainees had started an uprising and murdered the officers. Instead, there was silence. The government seemed to decide that hiding the event was safer than explaining it. Perhaps officials saw what remained inside the building and knew no believable story could cover it. No official report was ever released. No investigation appeared on television. It was as though the warehouse and everyone who died there had never existed. When I reached home, Regina and Isabella ran toward me. They both cried. The birthday party had been forgotten. The food, decorations, gifts, and cake no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was that I had returned alive. I held my wife and daughter in my arms and did not want to release them. That first night, I was physically exhausted, but unable to relax. One of my aunts gave me a sleeping pill. I disliked taking medication for sleep, but I knew I might remain awake all night without it. I swallowed the pill. I did not want to dream. But I did. I stood in complete darkness. I could not see the beast, but I felt its presence nearby. Its voice hissed around me. You are marked to see. You do not see with the eyes of your physical body. You see with the deeper essence housed inside you. Some people are marked because their souls are sensitive. Call it a gift or a curse. This is why you see what others cannot. No, I shouted into the darkness. I don't accept that. Everyone can see if they choose to look. The creature laughed. Your innocence amuses me. It is one reason I tormented you while you were imprisoned. Your fear was an acceptable appetizer before the main feast. A cold shiver passed through me. Then the presence disappeared. I woke suddenly and sat upright in bed. Regina slept peacefully beside me. I moved quietly into the bathroom. My mouth was painfully dry, and I needed water. As I filled a glass, a memory returned. At first, it came as a small image. Then everything rushed back. I had seen the creature before. I had been very young, perhaps only a little older than Isabella. One night I woke screaming. My abuelita, who lived with us at the time, rushed into the room. She held me and stroked my hair while I tried to explain what I had seen. I told her about a man with many faces. I told her about red eyes. I told her about a beast. My words made no sense to her. And after some time, she calmed me with soft whispers. I stopped crying, but I did not return to sleep. I remained awake, thinking about what the creature had said. For most of my life, I had forgotten the memory. Now every detail returned with perfect clarity. The being from my childhood was the same man who had watched me inside the cage for 3 days. The same red eyes, the same endless faces, the same terrible smile. When I was a child, I had not understood his message. Now I remembered every word. They will come for you one day, he had told me. They will imprison you. They will chain you and treat you like a beast used for labor. Then hatred will begin growing inside you. That is the cycle. I feed upon it. Hate creates more hate, and that hate creates even more. With every generation, I grow stronger. You humans always become the things you claim to hate. I feed on those who surrender completely to hatred. I have existed for ages, and I will never go hungry. Your species will continue its small arguments until they become wars. Those wars will be created by people hungry for power, people whose hatred is pure and black. Lies, I had screamed as a child. The creature had only laughed. Standing in my bathroom years later, I understood that some of its words contained truth. That did not mean everything it said was true. The most dangerous lies are often mixed with enough truth to make them believable. I still do not know why I was chosen to see it. Maybe God chooses certain people. Maybe the universe throws invisible dice, and some of us simply land in the wrong place at the right moment. Perhaps certain people see these things because someone must survive and tell the story. That is why I am sharing mine. Pain is unavoidable during our short and difficult lives. Every person will experience loss, fear, rejection, humiliation, or injustice. But pain does not have to become hatred. I often think about my sweet Isabella. At 3 years old, she could not understand the darkness waiting in the world. One day, people would try to teach her fear. They might judge her name, her skin, her family, her language, or where her grandparents were born. The world might try to make her angry. It might try to turn her pain into hatred. But Bella had always been a fighter. She had fought to enter the world before we were ready for her. She had fought for attention,